George P. Carroll has spent a lifetime playing and teaching the drum. One of his favorites is from the Noble and Cooley Drum Company.
It's a superb snare drum. It works just like the best snare drums in the world are supposed to. It sounds exactly right. Because they made it, they're very careful about how it was made. So they still have that old-fashioned degree of excellence.
After a long career in military music, Carroll is now retired and directs the band of the Maryland wing of the Civil Air Patrol. He often uses Noble and Cooley drums when performing traditional military music. Noble and Cooley's drum shells are crafted from a single plank of wood and bent with steam, the way drums used to be made in the old days. In fact, they're made with the same machinery the company used when it was founded in 1854. Company president Jay Jones says this gives their signature snare drums a clean, full sound.
All the recording artists were looking for this style of drum. The one-piece steam-bent wood has a much better sound, goes to tape better than a ply drum.
When Silas Noble and James Cooley started the company, though, it was not to make instruments for professional musicians. Instead, they wanted to make high-quality toy drums and drum sets for children. Jay Jones is a sixth-generation descendant of James Cooley. He says Noble and Cooley toy drums soon became a big hit.
The first year together, they made 631 drums, and shortly after the Civil War, they're making 80,000 drums a year.
During its peak years, the company was producing between 1,000 and 1,200 toy drum sets a day, which it sold to major U.S. department stores. Christmas was an especially busy time for Noble and Cooley, and on occasion, they also made special edition drums. For example, for the company's 100th birthday in 1954, they created a drum for David Eisenhower, the grandson of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and presented it to him at the White House. When the American Civil War broke out in 1861, Noble and Cooley cut back on its toy production to make marching drums for the Union Army. Drums like the ones seen here in this reenactment. Jay Jones says drums, like this one used in the historic Battle of Gettysburg, played a major role in the war.
Drums were used on the battlefields for communications. It was before radio. The different drum beats would signal retreat or charge or right flank. All the different rudiments had different meanings, and so the drums were the communication on the field.
The company continued making military drums up through 1920, but it kept making its signature toy drums up through the 1980s.
The height of the company, really, as far as production-wise and dollar-wise, was in the 70s, up till almost about 79 was our largest year for volume and production. That was definitely the rock and roll era. The Beatles came into town, everyone was all hyped up on rock and roll, every kid wanted to be a drummer. So we really rode that wave and produced an awful lot of drums.
By the early 1980s, competition from overseas had started to impact sales of toy drums, and Jay Jones was getting restless. So in 1984, he turned his attention to professional musicians. He began making solid-shelled drums using the same steam-bending equipment his ancestors had used more than 100 years before. The company's high-quality snare drums soon earned a reputation for excellence among musicians the world over, giving Noble and Cooley a substantial foothold in the music industry. Jay Jones says Noble and Cooley customers include drummers for notable recording artists such as Paul McCartney, whose drummer used a Noble and Cooley drum set during a 1994 U.S. tour, Phil Collins, Sting, and Billy Joel. Today, Noble and Cooley continues to make toy drums, but the bulk of its sales are now the high-end snare drums for which it has become famous. Drummer George Carroll says a good drum is ultimately defined by its craftsmanship.
And that standard of excellence that the old-time makers lived by still marches on with that drum. It's not something put together just to make money.
Julie Tabo, VOA News, Granville, Massachusetts.